We know that video is an excellent training tool for our staff trainings. And we also know that anytime the three of us talk about our favorite training videos, they are our most popular and most listened to episodes. So today we're coming back with 9 more quick fire videos that you can use during your staff training this year.
Wouldn't it be refreshing if your registration software gave you more time? With UltraCamp, you can track attendance, manage staff applications, streamline registration, and much more. Get back the time you need to focus on what is really important. Camp. Find out more at summercampsoftware.com/CampCode.
Welcome to CampCode, a podcast brought to you by GoCampPro. We have created and are dedicated to this podcast because we believe that staff training is one of, if not the most important part of your job as a camp director. Staff training is what prepares your staff to care for their kids, to feel confident in their skills, to do their jobs to the best of their ability, and to learn along the way. A well thought out and intentional staff training will help you in more ways than you can imagine, and we need to help each other bring our very best. Today, we are so excited to be able to offer you yet another top 9 videos to show your staff episode. We've done a few of these over the years, and these are a great way to show your staff what you're looking for to help them get a head start on their leadership thinking or to start great discussion at staff training. So here we go, 9 more great videos for you to share before or during training. Before we get there, why don't we introduce ourselves? So let's start with you, Ruby.
I'm Ruby Compton. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer of Ruby Outdoors. We are gearing up for summer camp here in Western North Carolina, where I live. And camps are planning to go forward this summer, and I will be working at camp this summer. I've been filling out health forms. I'm like your staff. It's been an adventure. Health forms and tax forms all day.
Very exciting. Camp is very lucky to have you back. And Gabs.
I'm one of the directors of Camp Waro. Camp Waro is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada, and we focus on creating a positive female community for our campers and our staff.
Thanks, Gab. And I'm Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro. I was a camp director for 15 years, but now have the privilege of working as a camp consultant. And my big focus is intentional leadership training. So 9 videos. We're going to start one from each of us per round. And Ruby, we're letting you go first.
And like we always do with camp, I'm going to give you 2 to start. So, because I have 2 that come from the same person and they're both great. And you're probably actually going to notice a little bit of a theme in my videos. But both of my videos come from Chad Littlefield. I've talked about him before. He is the person, along with his business partner, Will Wise, who created the We Connect cards. If you've ever done an event or training with me, you've probably seen me use those. Also, the book Ask Powerful Questions, which I'll be honest, it was a life-changing book. When I read it, I started having conversations very differently with folks and being able to find connections much more quickly. And so Chad has been prolific in producing videos this year, both for how to make more meaningful online and virtual experiences and connections, but also as is his bread and butter, which is just having more meaningful conversations. So he has 2 videos that I think are great for staff training this year. One is how to be a good storyteller in conversation. And I'll give you a little spoiler alert. This video is only about 4 minutes long, but he talks about a really great storyteller who gave him the advice of when you are telling a story in conversation, know how you're going to start and know how you're going to end. And if you have that intention figured out, then you're going to be able to create something really great in the middle. But if you don't know where you're headed, you're a lot less likely to create a great story. And I was like, that sounds familiar. I feel like we've said that on the podcast a few times, but hearing it in the context of storytelling, I think was really smart. There's also another great video that just goes hand in hand with it. So that's why I'm giving you 2 on the first one, he did a video called Taking Small Talk to Real Talk. And it does a great job offering how to come up with the kinds of questions that go beyond just, hey, how are you today? What's your favorite color? And some of those icebreakers that we tend to use, to moving to more specific conversation and asking questions in a way that makes people feel noticed. And so I think both of those are smart places for your staff to be this summer, because I think we need to re-practice how to have conversations again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Ruby. Gab, where would you like to start us off?
I also have two videos, but from the same area. And so my two videos are Leah and Caddy's Thanks to Camp Stories. They're videos that are hosted on the International Camping Fellowship website, and it's two people that are from different areas. So one who went through a camper CIT and staff member as you know at camp, and the other one simply as a staff member. And they tell their thanks to camp story in almost a spoken word type video. And they list through all of their experiences. And it starts off as something that is, it's cute and fun and funny. And as the video goes on, it gets a little bit more serious and sentimental and impactful. And you can really see the arc of the impact that camp has had on both of these individuals. Caddy's story is in French, and there's many subtitles. I think we have about 6 different languages. And Leah's story, though she is French speaking, is in English. She's celebrating her mistakes while she's speaking. And there's also, I think, approximately 6 different languages and subtitles. I think where this can be helpful for staff members and staff training is to share these videos and then talk to staff about how they would like to share their thanks to camp story or their because of camp story. And we know that when staff members and campers have an opportunity to reflect on any activity that they do at camp, and they have that reflection piece, that's where the real learning comes in. And sometimes we do that so well at camp on individual activities or experiences like a canoe trip, or being on stage, and we get to reflect that. But we don't actually sometimes take the time, besides perhaps a survey, to give an opportunity to our staff members and our campers to talk about how camp has impacted them beyond camp. And this is a part of the Thanks to Camp program that's being run during April, but you can do this any time of the year. And you can visit thankstocamp.org to see how you can get your staff members and campers more involved. But basically, for me, it's giving them the space to think about how camp matters to them and how it's impacted them beyond camp, and what they do at camp matters to the kids, and what they do with the kids will impact them beyond camp.
That's great, Gab. Thank you. And I have seen Leah's. I have not yet seen Caddy's, but Leah's is very powerful and incredibly well done. And when you do see it, you'll hear a familiar voice at the beginning of that video. And we can thank Gabs for the great work of those. I went down the TED Talk rabbit hole for today's podcast, and I came out with a few winners. First off, The Strongest Predictor for Success by Angela Lee Duckworth. And she asked the question, who is successful and why? And in all the contexts that she studies, one characteristic emerged as the predictor for success. And it was, of course, no surprise to us in the camping industry, grit. Passion and perseverance for long-term goals, stamina, sticking with your future day in and day out, working hard to make that future a reality. Of course, she delves a little bit into the growth mindset and Dr. Dweck. She states that kids with grit don't believe that failure is a permanent condition. People with grit believe that we have to be willing to fail, to be wrong, to start over with lessons learned. This video is super short, but it is a great conversation starter for staff training. I'm sure many of us have already talked with our staff about the growth mindset over the years. This is just another way to introduce the topic and allow staff in small groups afterwards to discuss or ask questions or plan for how they will teach kids this summer, what lessons they want them to go home with, how they can best help kids to develop grit. So how can you use this at training this summer, especially in lieu of a very difficult year for all of us? How can we refocus on the development of the growth mindset? What might get in our way this year? How may the events of the last year hinder this process? And what can we do about it? All kinds of questions to ask your staff. So a great little video to get your staff back into the growth mindset. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with you shortly.
I don't know about you, but I didn't get into year-round camp work to suck AC in the office and stare at a computer screen at my camp database. Sometimes all the busy work and button clicking associated with running camp keeps us from seeing why we are there. That's why I encourage you to get to know my friends at Ultra Camp. Ultra Camp helps you get back to spending time remembering why you love working at camp. How can you do this? Well, UltraCamp gives you powerful tools integrated into your registration software. With UltraCamp, you get automated billing, simple online registration for customers, a staffing module for hiring, including integrated background checks, and a communication module for customers and donors. If you think this all sounds too good to be true, friends, it is real. Visit summercampsoftware.com/campcode. And right now, UltraCamp is offering free setup for a limited time exclusively to CampCode listeners. My friends at UltraCamp would love to show you a future where you finally have the time to get back to what's really important, running camp. Visit their website, summercampsoftware.com/campcode, and set up a time to chat.
And we are back with my two co-hosts who have made a liar out of me already. We don't have 9 videos. We apparently have 11. So, Ruby, let's get back to you. What have you got for round 2?
Well, continuing on the theme of conversations, one of the best videos that I've ever seen about how to be better at having conversations is a TED Talk as well. It is by Celeste Headlee. And this was done, I believe, in Savannah. I may be wrong, but I think it's the TEDx that happened in Savannah. And this is a quote. It's actually not her quote. She's reading this quote from another person who was talking about conversation, but it talks about why conversation is so important. And that quote is, "Conversational competence might be the single most overlooked skill we fail to teach." And if you think about it, like, who taught you how to have conversations? Was it reality TV? Was it watching family members or folks from home converse after a worship service, right? Like that's definitely a time that I saw conversation happening. Are folks sitting down to the dinner table and having conversation around a meal, or is that not happening, right? So I think we have to think about the fact that our campers going into the summer and our staff going into the summer have had a much smaller social circle that they're having conversations with, and many fewer of those are in person. And so we need to help and provide those basic foundational skills for how to have conversations. And this TEDx talk from Celeste Headlee is fantastic and does a really great job spelling that out. And we'll include the link to all of these videos in our show notes.
Great. Thank you very much, Ruby. And Gabs, what's your next one?
I'll go with the TED Talk as well. Might as well. I was also thinking, Beth, with the 11 videos to 9 or 9 videos to 11 videos. I think when we had a session, and I think in the description it said the top 12 tips for blah 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 staff training, and it was actually like 21 tips. So there's like a theme here that we're like, it's only this amount, but then we always add on a little bit more.
Oh, we under promise and over deliver.
There you go. So for me, this would be primarily for leadership team members. How to avoid death by PowerPoint. David J.B. Phillips, I believe he's Swedish. He is particular, and he describes why certain PowerPoint slides work and why certain PowerPoint slides are horrible. And so if you're looking at using some PowerPoints for your training this summer, and you're looking at making sure that the information is clear and it's really used as an added tool for learning, I think this is a great video to share with anybody that is going to be leading a session with PowerPoints. And I'm working with some of my younger staff members who are doing an internship. There were our CITs last year, and they didn't get, the in-person camper experience. So right now they're running a program with campers, and the campers are doing a project, and these 17-year-olds with the supervision of a leadership team member are running this project. And it was really, really interesting to see how our 17, 18-year-olds were putting together these presentations for our campers, and they were using very academic language, a lot of text, very much what is expected at school. And we had to really deprogram them to say, well, how does a kid understand this language? Or why is it exciting to look at this slide? And now I'm seeing that their slides have much simpler language as well as key information. And it also shows them that they have to learn their content before they're going to present. And so a lot of them, of course, were reading off of their screens when they were going through their walkthrough before they met with campers. But this process also helps those staff members and leadership team members understand their content more. We know that when we simplify information, that's much harder than adding a lot more information. So I think this guy is really funny. I think he makes it quite approachable. And I think there's some great lessons in there to help refine your leadership team members or whoever's giving a presentation their visual content.
Great. Thanks, Gab. And no surprise that Gab is giving us a video that talks about how to perfect your video and PowerPoint presentations.
Yes.
So she's so great at it. My second video suggestion is What We Can Learn from Fangirls by Yve Blake. And it's a great little dive into young female enthusiasm. So what Yve says is that if girls grow up in a world where words like crazy and psycho and hysterical are used to describe female enthusiasm, then how does that shape the way girls get to see themselves? Are they then told that they are less capable of reason and rationality than their brothers? What if we decided to rethink the words we use to describe the joy of fangirls? And what if we didn't allow ourselves to diminish girls with words that undermine their intelligence, their interests, and their capabilities? What can we learn from fangirls? Yve Blake asks us to reevaluate our reaction to that misunderstood passion and power of fangirls, emphasizing that we should all embrace our own unbridled enthusiasm. So this too, for me, is a great discussion starter for staff, not only on finding the joy in life, but also in helping us to evaluate the power of our language, the ways in which we treat one another, and the ways in which we can learn from one another and build each other up. It's also very amusing and very entertaining. So check it out, For the Love of Fangirls. And now we're going to hear from each of us one more time before we head to our famous recap. Ruby, floor is yours.
Okay, it's probably not surprising. I'm going to throw in a zany one. And I was going back through and looking at my YouTube history, trying to look back on what are some of the videos I've watched over the last year and found some meaning from as I was preparing for this call. And one of my most favorite ones is a video entitled "Ducks Annihilate a Bowl of Peas." And it's a very short video. In fact, I'm going to screen share. So if you're watching the YouTube, you're going to get to actually see this because it's really just so phenomenal. I'll even share the sound. 20-second video. Can you all see it? Can you see it? Great. Okay, here we go. So you can enjoy the noises. There's a guy holding a bowl of peas. There are ducks running over, and the ducks come over. And there's no other way to describe it. They just begin. You can hear it. So funny. It's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
I don't think a lot of people get to see your zany side like we do. I'm so happy because for me, this video describes you in such a wonderful way, and it's just okay.
Very
sorry,
true.
Go for it.
So, but right, okay. I think there are so many ways you could use this video. I think one way, this is a little more serious version, is like, I think we have campers and families that are hungry to do stuff this year. And so pretty much anything that you put out there that's even like decent quality, right? These peas are just like, they're not anything fancy. There's nothing special on them, but people are going to eat it up and they're going to be so excited. I also think that I want to create programming that my kids get that excited about. And I want my staff to be as excited about what they are doing as these ducks are about those peas. So, and it just is funny. It's just a funny video. And I think sometimes we have to remember, as I think we've said on the podcast, we were talking before the show about how we've done a lot of presenting together and we can't remember what we said on the podcast versus in presentations and whatnot. But that this is a summer where we are going to have to remind our staff to have fun, that they're probably going to come in a little more serious minded, and we have to remind them to be playful. And I think this is a great video for doing so because it's silly, it's 24 seconds, and it is ducks annihilating a bowl of peas. So that is my last contribution to our quickfire videos today.
That's great, Ruby. And I think too, you could use it in another way by showing it for the 24 seconds and then say in small groups, okay, come up with why I showed you that. And let them do, and there could be somebody that says, well, when dinner is put down on the table, we don't all run, and like they could come up with all kinds of reasons why. It's like the metaphor game that I've talked about before. But I think it'd be a great way to introduce something and give them a little giggle during staff training as well.
Yeah, amazing. Hashtag peas are everything.
So true.
Gab, your last one, please.
My last one is not a surprise either, I don't think. This is specific for our camp directors, camp professionals, whatever your camp looks like this summer. Maybe you aren't able to run camp the way you want to run camp, but you still want to create connections with your campers and your staff members. I have spent pretty much a better part of this year researching cameras and microphones, and just to make that experience a little bit better for the people on the other end. The downside is I also realize that when your internet's a little wonky, sometimes whatever camera you have, you still have pixelated slides, but we're working with it. The effort is there. And there's this wonderful individual named Caleb Pike, and he does so many wonderful reviews, very detailed reviews. I understand perhaps 12% of what he talks about, but he has this ASMR voice, and I'm here for it. So one of his videos is a full YouTube studio, basically on a stand. And all of the equipment that he uses, he really breaks it down in a simple way to use. And then all of those pieces aren't necessarily, in my opinion, that expensive. He's going for stuff that is attainable and achievable. I think that it is difficult right now because some of us don't know what our summer is going to look like, but we still want to create those connections. And for me, this has been something that's been helpful for me to know that maybe it's a sense of control I'm looking for, and I feel like I can control this. But it's also something where I also feel it helps me with my own confidence when I am meeting with my staff and when I am meeting with my campers, and I'm getting feedback on, oh, that looks really nice, or that sounds really great. The other thing is, it's so easy for me to do quick staff training videos. Everything's hooked up to my computer, which means that everything is recorded into my computer so that I'm not taking my card out of my camera, putting it in. I can literally record it right onto Zoom, and somebody on the other end of Zoom can literally take that recording and upload it onto YouTube if I don't have time to do that. So there's so much that has made my life easier when I've been trying to communicate with my community in a visual way when we have to be social distanced. And so I think Caleb's stuff is awesome. I think it's inspiring. And so if you're looking at creating an experience that for you is helpful, and I would start with you and see if this is something you're interested in, I would check out his video on full YouTube studio.
Thanks, Gabs. And I think this is one of those episodes, and now that I'm starting to say this out loud, I wonder if they all are like this, but where you really get to see our three different personalities in the choices that we have made. So my last video is a bit out there for staff training, but I'm going to suggest it anyway. So if I were running staff training this year, I would have an evening program midweek where my staff were a bit in need of a less energetic activity. I would make hot chocolate and little cakes, and that will become obvious if you ever watch an episode. I would put them into small groups, and then I would have them all watch together an episode of Call the Midwife. It's a BBC show that follows the nurses and the midwives and nuns from Nonnatus House who visit expectant mothers and the other people of Poplar, which was a very impoverished neighborhood in England in the late 1950s and 60s. And they provided the poorest people with the best possible care. So, what does this have to do with camp, you ask? Okay, so just hear me out. I was rewatching this series recently in these pandemic times, and I found it not only uplifting, but also filled with many life lessons that apply to living a life of service to others and choosing to live in community, even when you don't get along all the time. So watch one episode, pick whichever one you like. But I mean, the original episode is likely a great place to start because you can also debrief what it might be like for a new person arriving on staff. As you start that series, there's a brand new nurse who joins this community. And before you watch the episode, front load with your staff that they're to watch it with an eye for what lessons they can glean about living in community and caring for others at camp. Maybe you want to come up with some questions for them after you preview the episode yourself prior to them seeing it. So post watching, give time for folks to discuss in their groups and then debrief as a whole. And really interesting things are bound to come up, like how to deal with folks you don't always agree with, what it's like to be supervised or a supervisor, how to care for people without judgment of circumstance, what life is like without cell phones, computers, televisions. They didn't even have phones in their homes. They had them in call boxes on the street. And the power of living together where all time and effort are spent serving, caring for friends and neighbors, creating programs for the community, and being fully present every day. I am slightly biased, but I am willing to bet they're going to want to watch more than one episode. So check it out. Call the midwife. All right. We are now ready for Gab's famous recap.
Thank you. And I think, Beth, that's such a great idea. And there's probably shows that people who are listening that are thinking back to shows such as Brooklyn Nine-Nine and even the Great British Bake Off, how kind everybody is to each other. So any of those shows where people can just relax, calm down, and appreciate and notice those lessons, I think, are any show that you connect with that have those lessons. Beth, that's such a great idea. Okay, for the recap, we have a whole bunch of videos for you that have range on a whole wide range of topics, and that just shows our different personalities. We have similar values, very different personalities. So why don't we start when we're talking about videos? Maybe you want to become an influencer, and therefore you're going to check out video how to become a YouTube studio star, and there's a video about that. There's also videos about, hey, you want your PowerPoint to look great? No, you don't. You want it to look legendary. Check out that video. An awareness of the impact of camp. Hey, maybe it would be nice for our counselors to know that camp is more than just fun. And I know that they know it, but let's make sure that they have the language to talk about it and teach their campers about it and motivate each other about why they're doing what they're doing. And while they're doing that, they could also learn how to tell a great story. Hello, you need a beginning and an end. And if those two connect, mwah, it is beautiful. Look at great comedians. They do it all the time. And when we're talking about stories, they need to be meaningful. So let's take that small talk and turn it into real talk, which is really conversation competencies. And while we're at that, we should also be looking at reframing our language, fangirl it up. And when we're doing that, we can also watch some TV shows and talk about great communities and what can we do at our organization to do such a thing. And you know what great communities need? They need grit. And they also need hashtag peas are everything. And that is our recap for today.
Yeah, so that was really amazing.
Stellar, very stellar, Gab. Well done. Way to sort of connect them all together. All right.
I listened to Ruby's first piece and I was like, okay, we got to have a beginning and we've got to have an end. Let's do this.
Nice
Challenge
job.
accepted, Ruby.
All right. And before we wrap up with our best practice, which is from Gab this week, Here's how folks can connect with us and get involved in the conversation. So join us by using the hashtag CampCode and let us know the topics you'd like us to discuss, any guests you recommend we talk to, either on the show or ahead of time, any great leadership training tips that you'd like to share. We would love to hear from you because we're all about sharing in this industry. So tell us your thoughts on this episode. You can also use that hashtag CampCode. If you found our podcast to be useful, we would love it if you'd leave us a rating and a review in your podcasting app. Your feedback helps us to keep the show going, and we love our reviewers. We would be happy to share them online and to give you a shout out. So here is how you can get in touch with each one of us individually. Ruby.
You can be in touch at ruby@rubyoutdoors.com. You can also find me on Instagram at rubyoutdoors or on Twitter at rubylyn85.
Thank you. And Gabs?
You can follow me on Instagram at Gabrielle Rail. Rail takes 2 L's, and you can check out where I work at waro.com, OUAREAU, or you can contact me at info@waro.com.
Thank you. And you can find out where I work at gocamp.pro. You can email me directly at beth@gocamp.pro. And you can find me on Twitter as Topaz or on Instagram as Topaz Faye, F-A-E. And Ruby, what are we doing for our next podcast?
Well, we all know that every summer is special and unique, but this particular summer is going to be an extra special and unique summer. So next episode is going to be about embracing the uniqueness of this particular summer.
Great. I look forward to that one. Our final segment on each podcast, as you know, is a best practice for leadership training. And again, we would love to hear some of your memorable moments or your most effective training tips. This week, our best practice comes from Gabrielle.
And so for me, I want to talk about an experience that I had, a positive experience I had when I was 15 years old. When I was 15, I was working on my canoeing last level, which is called artistry. It's a very hard level to pass. And I was doing my windy whitewater triangle, solo triangle, meaning I was soloing a canoe by myself on our lake, which is fairly big, in white caps. And I had to do a triangle, a very, very large triangle. And it was quite difficult. And it had to be while it was windy. So it was early in the morning. And the camp counselor that was in charge, who was the head of canoeing, stood on the dock for over 40 minutes while I was doing this windy triangle. And I could see her at a distance jumping up and down and screaming, probably woke up the whole camp, and encouraging me from the dock. And I actually had a talk with her recently about that experience. And she asked me, how are you going to lead from the dock? And we were talking about how, with the leadership that I have been doing in the past year and a bit, it has been from a distance. And, I'm still unsure whether our camp is going to run or not, but I know that I'm going to have to lead not the way I usually do lead. And so in our conversation, there was 2 things that she brought to my attention. One was to pay attention to how I am right now. And are there certain things that I react to differently in a positive way or in a difficult way? So maybe things in the past, they bothered me more, and maybe things in the past I reacted to in a different way, and now I'm reacting to now in a positive way or a negative way. She was saying, take the time and assess how you're going to do before you lead, and understand that you might be leading from the dock, and that's a different position that you've ever been in before. And that's just something I've been thinking about a lot, is how have I changed over the year, and how's that going to affect my leadership, and that my leadership in itself is going to be different, and to be okay with that, but just to take some time to process it. And so I guess for me, the best practice is to talk to a friend and talk about your expectations of yourself this summer, and to try to have an understanding of what that's going to look like, and also to try to be kind to yourself. It's just basically saying, be kind to yourself. It's going to be different, but it's, we got to pay a little attention to where we're at right now, so we can assess for the summer.
Great. Thanks so much, Gab. Well, that wraps things up for today. CampCode is part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network, and you can check out all our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode. And from all of us here at CampCode, thanks for the listening, friends.